Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the Gateway API Inference Extension community meeting for January 23rd of 2025. As a reminder, this is a CNCF project and govern meeting. And what that means is we're going to follow code of conduct, which means be nice to one another, be kind, respectful, and all will go well. So again, thanks for joining. And what I did is I put a link to today's agenda in the chat window, and we'll use that to guide today's discussion. I put a few topics in today's agenda, which should go relatively quickly. So if anyone else has a topic that they would like to address, just go ahead and put your GitHub ID in brackets along with the agenda topic and any references to help provide additional context. With that said, let me go ahead and share my screen and to help guide the discussion. Let's see, we'll just share my whole screen. Please let me know if you can't see the screen, but you should be looking at today's agenda. And the first topic that I have is really just kind of follow-ups from last week's meeting. We discussed the first item we discussed last week was enabling the discussions tab in the GitHub repo. Kellen, do you have any updates on that? Is that something that that was done, or do we need to mark that still as an action item?
I thought I checked it. It is enabled now. At least I see it, but maybe that's an admin thing. I can double check and make sure that's working. I'll do that right now.
Okay. As the notes say here from last week, I mean, this is just really a place for discussions and not necessarily issues. Rob, I see you on the call, and I know the Gateway API community has discussions enabled. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you mind maybe just providing a quick synopsis of how discussions are used in that community as opposed to having everything discussed in issues?
Yeah, I think it's been net positive. I'll admit there's been some confusion, and there's been some frustration in the sense that you're looking for something and you can't remember, was this an issue, was this discussion, etc., right? Like there's definitely overlap between the two. But the benefit of discussions is there are some new formats like Q&A. If you want to do polls, you can do that. There's enough benefits that I think they outweigh the potential confusion of two ways to do things. So I'm generally supportive. I don't think they're game changing, but there's pretty low risk to turning them on, so might as well.
With that feedback too, one of the thoughts that came to mind was, I wonder if let me take a step back. I think, as you mentioned, what's nice in discussions is like, there'll be the polling and just a little more free form discussion than, in issues where you don't want to go too deep on thoughts and so forth and pollute the issue. And I just wonder if to address the point that you brought up about confusion on whether this is, to find information an issue or discussion is somehow maybe linking the two, right? Where we, if a discussion gets long enough as a maintainer, we say, hey, let's create an issue and at least link the two. So that if someone's searching in issues, they find the topic and say, in the description of that issue, it says, see this reference discussion for details. I don't know, maybe that just causes a different word. But.
No, I think that's fair. I think that's in Gateway, we've used discussions as a more informal means of communication. So if you're not really sure about an idea, throw it in a discussion. There's an ideas category and get some feedback. And then if it turns into something that seems a bit more solid, it becomes an issue. And, I think that's a reasonable way to handle this.
Okay. So I guess just kind of a reminder for maintainers that, if we do start seeing discussions occur, and it makes sense to have an issue as a reference just to help avoid any of that confusion for potential contributors or interested parties, not losing context just because they can't find something in an issue when what they're looking for is in a discussion. So I'll make a note here, but just I think it's probably just a reminder for us. And I don't know, Kellen, I don't know enough about discussions. If there's even a reminder we could put somewhere in there to ensure that we create issues for discussions that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we can pin discussions, and obviously we can link comments. But yeah, best practice will probably just calling out in the discussion, hey, we're making an issue for this. Go ahead and link it. I think that's great.
Cool. So we talked about discussions. Hey, really quick, Kellen, you said you were going to check to see that the discussions tab is live.
I just enabled it. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. All right. Next on the list, again, this was the topic from last week about generalizing the gateway implementations effort. So I know there's been a few different PRs that landed to start kind of separating the gateway implementation from the inference extension implementation, or what we call the endpoint picker. I think we're good there, but I just wanted to call it out. Is there anything else missing from this topic of last week, or do we feel like that's been achieved?
I think one action item on my end is to upload that diagram that I presented last week to our docs. I'll wait for Kellen's PR to merge that updates our website, and then I plan to have one that describes the protocols that we discussed and link to the two proposals that we have right now, right? Like there is the endpoint picker protocol and then the API itself, right? Those two different proposals.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, because both of those docs, especially the one that really details the kind of that separation of the implementation from the extension and the extension protocol and the model serving protocol. I found that Google Doc very helpful, so that'd be great to get that on the site. All right, let's see. And then last but not least, I believe this PR merged, right? Let's see here. Yes. So
you're looking at the last week's agenda.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure. I was kind of just doing a quick right. Our first thing is updates. I just wanted to make sure if PR 164 didn't merge, I just wanted to make sure that we discuss it quickly to see what was needed. So with that said, today's first agenda topic, I consider that covered. Next one is create a pre-submit CI job that runs the E2E test. So let's take a look at this issue. This is something I just created to make sure we didn't lose this. So just recently, I think just in the last day or two, the E2E test that I created got merged. And with that said, we have some work to do to actually create a CI job that runs the E2E test. I think, in my opinion, let's see, it's something. This is something that we should be doing as a high priority item. But I have just kind of a few questions here, and thanks for giving me a response. I haven't had a chance to look at these responses yet, but let's see. What do we have here? So I guess the biggest question is I had an upstream PR here with the Kates.io repo to add a Hugging Face Hub SaaS account because the current model server that we're using, which is a Llama, requires a signed license agreement, and If you take a look at this issue here, there is some concern about doing that. So that led us down a path of, okay, do we use a fake model server, or do we use some other actual model server to replace Llama with a model server that does not require a license agreement? And so, let me pull that back up. I don't know, do we have any thoughts here on kind of that first issue of like what model server approach? Should we fake it or should we use an actual model server? Any thoughts?
I don't like faking the model server. We are already doing in our integration test, so to speak. So that like if we want to do something like this, it's already covered there in some respect. And I would continue to like, you know, if we want to try, if we want to go down that path, it needs to be like some sort of an integration test. Probably is the more logical thing to do. End-to-end test should really be an end-to-end test, like really testing things in practice. Our biggest challenge for me is actually the where we get the GPUs from to test this. For the model, I assume there will be some open source models at some point.
I can help you with that. As I suggested a couple, I think the DeepSeek, you know, popular DeepSeek, and also Queen models are free. I think, at least when I tried, there's nothing. You don't need an account to use it. So.
All right, but the question with DeepSeek, when I was testing some of the different model servers, is like this matrix of like, okay, well, is a model server supported by the model server architecture supported by VLLM, and if so, does it also support, you know, have the LoRa support as well?
The Queen one should be supported. It's out there for quite a while, and there's a bunch of adapters already. DeepSeek is pretty new, so I wouldn't try that one. I expect issues with that.
Yeah. So yeah, I appreciate you providing feedback on the, how is it pronounced, Quen or Queen model?
I'm not sure. People...
Okay, I pronounce it Quen. So yeah, I just haven't had a chance. You know, I'm juggling a dozen different balls up in the air and haven't had a chance to circle around on this issue to actually test it. So if anyone does have, you know, time to you know, swap out the Llama model that's currently being used in the examples for the project with Quen, feel free to do so.
So do you want an example, like a example manifest with this model and LoRa? I can help you with that.
Oh man, that'd be awesome. Yeah, if we could do that. And
yeah, this is the model, kind of the default in there, getting started guide. So I think it should just work.
Yeah, and if it does work, I mean, I would be in favor of just having a PR that swaps out Llama for whatever model you find, so that users don't have to deal with a Hugging Face, you know, secret and you know, signing a license agreement, all that kind of stuff. I don't know if anyone else agrees, but I would be all for that. Make it a little bit easier. And then the GPUs. So there is concern about being able to get GPUs. I guess, I mean, that's obviously would be a big roadblock for us. I don't know, how do we resolve that issue?
Are we able to run those smaller models on CPU with VLM? Trong, do you know?
I have no idea.
Okay. So I guess this is one thing to follow. Maybe we can check if we can run. Sorry, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, VLM released the CPU version, but it depends on the purpose. I think for some of the, like the routing or some like functional testing, it doesn't have to like rely on the real engine. So so that's why I'm saying like mock engine is another approach. Yeah, like if we like mock the like required interface, that's good as well, and that save a lot of like resources. So it depends, but the CPU version works. Yeah, VLM.
Like for LoRa as well, do you know?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. They just move like the kernel computation on CPU. But honestly, I haven't tried the LoRa pass, but from the theory, it should not be like a blocker.
So I think we just need, we need someone to test the setup on CPUs instead of GPUs.
Yeah, I can help on this as well. Yeah, put it on my side. Yeah.
So in today's agenda, I linked to this issue, and if you could just do me a favor, and if you're going to take down or take on one of these bullet points, if you could just make a note here, make a comment in this issue, so that we can circle back and keep things on track. So yeah, thank you both for helping out, and I'll keep my fingers crossed that we don't need GPUs and we can use Quen with LoRa support and BLM, and it's all one happy family. Cool. All right. Next thing is the config proposal status update. I went ahead and commented in this pull request, and I think all my comments were pretty basic, straightforward. The one comment that I had that, and Rob, I believe I CC'd you on this, is just thinking in the future, where in a world where an extension supports multiple inference pools, and having to repeat that configuration for each inference pool. And as I thought through it, I was like, okay, if we make the inference config, let me see again what this type is, or the endpoint picker config, if we made this optional, I think that leaves us open for the opportunity to have kind of a higher level of abstraction for, config that could be shared across multiple inference pools. So with that, go ahead.
I responded to your comment. I think we have a path. So that struct is a one-off. So inside it, we're going to have multiple options. The first option is one that is embedded, right? Like if you go inside that struct, right? So that the struct is meant to be a one-off. So the first option that we have right now is extension that is defined in line, right? Like it's defined in the same. We can add another one in the future if we think, oh, maybe we should have a configuration CRD, and we can have like another option here, mutually exclusive. So that's the intent of this, to be a one-off. This is our first, option that should be easy for people to use, because you don't need to create another configuration as object and so on and so forth. But I'm with you that I don't think we should design stuff in a way that blocks, a future where the APP can support multiple server pools. Does that answer this concern?
It does. I guess then more again into like the particulars, like when you say it's a one-of, so from my understanding, that would be like a union type, and if that's the case, I feel like we're maybe missing a couple little details here to make it a union type, which I can get into those details in my comments in the PR. But if this approach is a union type, then yeah, I mean, I'm in support of that.
So just throw out a couple other ideas. One, you can always loosen validation a lot easier than you can tighten it. So until we have a clear case for, making what happens when this is optional, I would default to starting with it required. There are a few different ways you could interpret the lack of configuration here, right? So one of them is an implementation has some kind of default, right? So this is one, like I'm thinking for you, Danian, if you have embed endpoint picker in the gateway implementation, the gateway could have an easy default that was embedded potentially, right? That seems compelling. Not every that I don't know that that would work everywhere. The other approach would be that you imply some kind of default matching of, if you don't specify, then we assume that there's going to be an endpoint picker that exists with the same name as this inference pool, or, you know, like, I don't know, there's some, but for now, I tend to think that the easiest path is to require this and loosen in future. I think if we aim for this to be a union type, I don't think we need any meaningful action yet because we don't have any other fields in the struct. But I think we should maybe document somewhere that the intent is for this to be like, because right now the additional level of nesting seems unnecessary. You know, if any future reader is looking at this, they'll say, why do you have a struct in a struct with only one thing, you know? So explaining why we're doing that, I think, could be helpful. But yeah, since this is just a single field within there, I don't think we need anything.
So you're hitting two good points. So I thought I'm okay. I need to put that documentation again. I think I had it and then probably by mistake removed it. On the endpoint picker configuration, that this meant to be a union or a one-off, and that's why I'm also embedding it, like the endpoint picker config. If you see it, it's embedded so that we prevent that nesting. But I want the struct so that I can have a grouping, like, you know, struct for the union in the future. So if you go up, you're going to see it embedded.
For the record,
yeah, it makes sense. When I was, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, you can do union-like validation with cell without requiring that intermediate struct if you want. Like, so the struct is useful, and I guess if it's invisible, yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I did have some questions that you see here why it's embedded. So yeah, now that we're talking about it, it makes much more sense. So like, I will, after this call, do another quick review here, and should be able to give an LGTM. You know, with that said, though, I thought I saw somewhere that we wanted to add this after 0.1.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
still.
Right.
I think that, so we left it out of scope for 0.1 because I thought, oh, we're going to release 0.1 and, you know, immediately after that API review, and we've taken time to actually get to 0.1 ready, and along the same lines, this one got closer. I don't have a strong opinion here, but one of the things that was becoming more clear to me was, as we were trying to build controller implementations of this, it's hard to build a controller implementation if you don't know what to look at, and you kind of have to make some assumptions. And so if we include this in the initial release, that controller doesn't have to make assumptions of like name sameness, or, you know, I don't know how you would handle the lack of this configured. So in the interest of making it viable for controllers to start implementing sooner than later, I'm interested if it makes sense to pull this in. You know, if not, I think that's fine. But I'm just hoping, you know, I'm thinking it might be easier than doing a fast follow for 0.2 for anyone trying to implement this. But yeah.
I think that's great. We had a pretty lengthy API review that this was not included in. I did all the PRs, so I'm certain of it. I'd love for this model to be what we do going forward. I just don't want us to get hand slapped by any leads or anything for not doing a formal review.
Yeah, I think this is something like we should run by them. That we, to be clear, this is ultimately up to the maintainers of this project because we're in x-kates.io. So the API review at this stage, since it's alpha and x-kates.io, means it's a nice nice thing to do, but not a requirement to release. So we, I can't include myself in this, but the set of maintainers here ultimately need to make the call. But yeah, I think it would be a good, practice to, at a minimum, reach out to the people who are part of the API review, run this idea by them, and see what they think.
Do we have someone on the call?
Shane
I
was,
don't.
but I think he had
Yeah,
to
Shane.
drop.
Yeah, good point.
Okay. I thought we presented this during our, we didn't go through the review like on the PR, but we did mention it in the meeting, right?
Yeah, it just was not, for anyone who looked at the PR, it was not there.
So like the mechanics of doing that, I agree that with what you said, Rob, that having a formal review for the config API is not necessary. And so with that said, to make sure that we're at least making them aware of the API, what are the best mechanics for doing that? Should we just say, okay, the PR is good by all maintainers, now just tag them in a comment and say, hey, we're going to hold on to this for a few days because we'd like to get your eyes on it? Or do we need to reach out some other way to make sure that they get some eyes on it?
No, I mean, if I were in your shoes, what I would do is just ping people on Slack and do some kind of lazy consensus of, if we don't hear back by X date, we're just going to go ahead, because all of these people, I think it was basically, we had working group serving and SIG network leads. I think that was roughly who was involved in the API review. So reach out to a chunk of them.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, I'll add that as an action item to today's meeting. Is there any other discussion on the config API? Otherwise, we can move on.
Maybe a question. Does anyone, I think we've resolved most of the open questions on this. And so it seems like if we get, some level of acceptance from higher levels, then we can merge this soonish, is what I'm hearing. Is anyone on the call, maybe this, is anyone on the call hesitant of trying to include this in 0.1 if we get sign off from API reviewers? Cool. Okay. Well, that's easy. All right. Well, I don't know who has that AI to follow. I should stop using AI because it's an overloaded term. But who's going to follow up with maintainers, or who, and then go with that?
Generally, I mean, I would say Abdullah, and I just say that just because I feel like whoever owns the PR, right, should kind of take that as ownership. Is that okay with you, Abdullah, or
yeah? So basically, reach out to Shane because it's only Shane that reviewed this PR, and one other person, like the initial one.
Yeah, that seems fair. Just reach out to the people who actually reviewed it, because we did cover everything in slides. So yeah.
And then
and if Shane wants to pull in additional reviewers, he's of course can do that.
But I intend to say that because this is a sub project, like I don't want to create, because we are deeply invested in this, we understand the full context. I greatly value those API reviews, but at this moment where we're trying to get velocity, I'm gonna do it, but I'll say, for example, one day I was hoping that we can merge it like today or tomorrow. I don't want to give a consensus, like a lazy consensus, a week, for example.
No, I agree. I think lazy consensus. lazy consensus of a day or less is fine. Yeah.
Yep, I'm for that as well.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
because it is that balancing act. We need to move quickly, but we want to make sure that it's thoughtful as well. So I think we're doing a good job there. So again, I'll do another review after this call, and let's get Shane to review it, and I think we'll be ready to merge. Awesome. All right. So config proposal topic is complete. Hand it over to you, Rob.
Yeah, I am very keenly aware of VO.1 and wanting to release that ASAP. I keep on, not to drive too far into this conference-driven development idea, but I would love to have, not just O.1 but O.2 released before KubeCon, but also I would love to have implementations, plural, like hopefully 3-ish ready by KubeCon. And I think to give implementations time to actually implement this, we really need to release ASAP. Releasing soon also starts a clock ticking for soak time of this API, which we're trying to do a fast follow ideally this summer for getting to GA. So the sooner we can start that clock ticking for soak time, the better. So anyway, I feel like most people on this call agree we should release as soon as possible. I just wanted to talk about what steps are required, how we want to handle releases in this project. It's always something to do the first release for any project, and you're kind of deciding on how things are going to work going forward. So, we can talk about the steps required, what day we want to release on, and if that first release is straight to O.1 or if we want a release candidate first, and if we should have a changelog. So those are my broad questions. It's really open-ended, but I don't know if anyone has opinions or wants to try and own this area. Yeah.
Kellen, I saw your hand up at one point. Did you still have a question or want to comment?
I think we should seek feedback more than polish, because we've made some double backing in a few different areas in this project, where we've decided to do this and then pulled back based off no external feedback. So I am leaning towards we release. I know we still have some things hanging. We always will. But yeah, I think we are doing X, Y, and Z, and anything else we can do in parallel if it's not part of the artifact. That's my humble opinion. I would love to see O.1 released, January 21st. But such is the way of things. So I think a very successful thing today would be to have a hard list of what we're doing. It's not going to be perfect, and accepting that is, I think, a great goal. Those are my thoughts.
Hey, Kellen, I think you bring up a good point of having a hard list, because the list that we have for O.1, it keeps growing, and I think that, that's key, is having the scope creep going on. So I think maybe we take a look at that list, unless others disagree. So let me just jump to it really quick and go to issues, the tracking 010. I mean, first thing is, we're right there, right? So I'm not going to look at the nice to haves, because unless others feel like we can't release without one of these two, then it shouldn't be a nice to have. It should be a must have. And if we look at the must haves, let's see here. We've got remove endpoint slice dependency. I think that's relatively new. I haven't seen that before. The website content. This seems to be pretty considerable effort. I guess part of that is, Rob, we could
as
actually
the owner
do
of that
this after
issue,
cutting the release, right?
Right. As the owner of that issue, I would encourage as much documentation as possible to be done before we release, but don't expect it to be completely done either. So, you know, I would move this into the nice to have bucket at this point.
Yeah,
Okay.
and for the API config, I would like to move it up to the must-have if we're that close. What do you guys think?
I agree. You know, after Rob's feedback, I could see myself, because I'm in that situation, right? So, I want to start working on the implementation, but I just don't feel comfortable going down that road until we at least have a 0.1 or a 0.1 release candidate. And having the config API to me will make it easier and to integrate our gateway implementation with the extension and all that stuff. So let me move this up, and let me move the website stuff. The website stuff I see as whoa, get back up here.
Yeah, no, I think it's, I think there's already some open PRs. Thank you to whoever. I think I was reviewing something from Kellen. That looks like a really annoying thing to navigate.
Look at that.
The list is just long enough to.
All right. Anyways, I'll rearrange this stuff. I got to close this again. Maybe that will be the trick. Let's try this again here. Give me a moment. And issue. Just for talking purposes, I'll rearrange the stuff after the call. But so this will no longer be a must-have. We've got the must-have for the config. This will be a nice-to-have. In my opinion, the website content should be a must-have before KubeCon, because I feel like that's going to be the big coming out party, and I always feel like at least having a landing page with a quick start guide that a user could, within a couple minutes, look at the landing page and say, oh, okay, I get what this is. Quick start doing a simple kube cuddle or execute a script, and they have a simple, straightforward environment to experience. To me, that would be a must-have.
Yeah, big plus one.
Okay.
Cool.
So, go ahead, Tom.
Just to avoid going through this line by line, I'd like to save some time. Do we want to sync up this afternoon and figure out, the maintainers can figure out what is our must-have list, and we can get a hard, immutable list by end of day, so we can start hacking down? I think that would be great.
Well, there's only two things left on this list, right? It's just the endpoint slice dependency and xproc.
I just think agreeing on the immutability is the biggest one.
Wait, where's immutability? Sorry.
Immutability of this list. It has been.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Flexible. Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah, Colin, do you think we could try to? Well, here, Rob, you go ahead, and then I'll.
No. I get what you're trying to say. Yeah, I think at some point you just need to have a cut line and say there's nothing else in this release. This is it for scope. So yeah, I agree. If that's not in this meeting, hopefully that's something that can be figured out today.
I mean, I would almost just take the aggressive approach that the must-have is the cut line, and it's a cut line for RC1, right? So kind of going back to this list here that Rob has, target date. I think we just need to put a date out there, create a GitHub milestone, and that milestone's for RC1, and that we say, we then say, okay, how much time do we need? What's kind of the standard out there with other projects between RC1 what's the cadence after that?
Yeah,
go
if we
ahead,
do a release, if we do a release candidate, that's a very nice way to test out release process in a somewhat low risk way. You don't want your O.1 to have missed some key detail in the process. So you may have multiple release candidates pretty close together because you're just missing, some part of your release process, especially for this O.1. I would also say that if we're doing release candidates, that could be an argument for merging that config PR sooner. And the lazy consensus timeline is just, we'll give you this, we can pull it from release before we do a final release, but we're assuming this is going to get in. And then we could merge it today, for example. We could get a release candidate out today. Release candidate is a lower bar, I think. I linked to the changelog for O.1 of Gateway API. I know, Daniel, you were involved back in that time, and I had to go back in time to remember what we did, but there were a surprising amount of changes between RC1 and RC2. I'm not suggesting we do that here, but I think these kinds of things of like, oh, maybe we should pull this out actually for RC2 or whatever is okay. So I'd rather just merge and assume we'll be okay.
Do we, Daniel, do you have, we need a release process, right? Like document a release process. Is this something that we can, we've used few in Q and JobSet and LWS, but since this project is closer to Gateway, maybe, do you have experience with that? Would you be able, like, for example, to suggest a release process that we document on our repo?
Yeah, well, let me take the action item here to document the release process. So I guess I would say, when we're talking about the mutability of this list, I'll create an issue to document the release process. Maybe it's actually just a subtask under filling out this website content, because I think it probably makes sense to have the release process. Anyways, we can figure that out. But yes, yeah. I will take the action item. It should be part of the must-haves, because of course it just makes sense. But yeah, I'm happy to. I'll take that as an action item and create the issue for that.
I added a link to what Gateway does today. It is not what I would call very good or effective, but it works. But if someone has a preferred method, please use the preferred method, because this is mostly just, bare minimum to work. But any better options are very welcome.
Cool. And Rob, while you're thinking about it, if there's, you said, there's things you like or don't like, if you can maybe put a comment somewhere, I'd just be curious to understand your thinking a little bit more there, because it has been a while.
Yeah, my biggest regret is that there's not much automation in our release process, and there really should be. We should have CI jobs. Like the one bit of automation we have right now is to publish an image that's tagged, which that took some time to set up. But we don't have much automation beyond that. So
it's the same for the other sub projects. Daniel, one thing we can do is create an issue template for the steps for the release process. Not necessarily like on the website, like an issue template. That's easy to do, like in the website. Mm-hmm. And then once you create that, it will be like, I think it will be stored in the repo itself. It will be like some sort of file there. And we can make suggestions to it and maybe remove some steps or add some steps there once that's created.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Sounds good. Yeah, anyone else has thoughts, feel free to add a sub-bullet here under this topic, but I'll take some of this information and move it on over to the issue that I create, and again, include the issue under these must-haves. I guess really quick, circling back to you, Kellen, too, you said maybe syncing up. If you want to, ping me via Slack, maybe we could try to make some headway there on Slack, but
yeah, sounds great.
Maybe that will be a good step, yeah.
I just want to comment on like the feeling that there was like scope creep. So I think what we're trying to do here with the first release is to make it possible, right? Like for integrations, and the things that we've added are things that are like enables that, and this is the key issue here, right? Like you want gateway integrations, and if we're putting something out there that is difficult to integrate with, there's no point of the release, in my opinion. So that's why the configuration API thing, and even the removing the endpoint slice thing, because it removes the need for these flags, in my opinion, are must-haves for the endpoint for the release. And so to summarize it, like the umbrella issue here that we're trying to get to is make it as easy as possible for that first integration and second integration. Otherwise, the release is not going to achieve any of its goals, because even if you set things up manual right now, okay, it's like a toy. Like you're going to set it up, you're going to run traffic, and then what? What kind of feedback are you going to get back from that?
That makes sense to me, and I like that we have a stated goal, and in my opinion, making integrations as easy as possible, especially because I'm going to be having to go down that path here soon. I appreciate that. So I think it's helpful that we capture what the goal is for the release, and this is something that I've done in the past with other projects. Like you called this a goal. What I've done in the past with other projects, because I've had to create roadmaps, and for each release is like typically it's like, okay, all these different features, and what I've tried to do in the past is release themes. And so like the theme is analogous to what you're saying as a goal here, and so it's something that I'd like us to keep in mind going forward, is that we have kind of like a high level goal or theme for a release, and that it's not just like, okay, every release here's just a bunch of features, but to we help kind of guide and shape the project going forward, and kind of set the priorities for a release with a release goal or release theme. But anyways, some of these other points here with the release. So the steps required. Again, I'll take that as like an action item to create the issue, assign it to myself, and start putting that together, documenting it. A target date. I would love for us. So before I do that, so release candidate first. I'm in favor of a release candidate. Does anyone oppose? Otherwise, I say that becomes the goal, is RC1.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. The thing I would say is I would not want to. Often you want a release candidate to sit around for, say, a week or two, gather feedback, etc. I don't think that's the purpose of these release candidates. I think it's just to make sure that we have a release process sorted, and then hopefully quick follow-ups from RC1 or RC2 to a final release.
I think that makes sense as well. So do we then just create like 2 milestones in the repo, one for RC1, and we set a date, and then we say the next milestone is a release, or do we do RC1, then we do RC2 2 weeks later or a week later, and then do?
No, I mean, to clarify, what I was meaning is like RC1 or 2 or whatever in a period of two days, basically.
Yeah.
And then final release early next week. Like that's the kind of timeline I was thinking, not. But this is just me. I do see Kellen mentioned in chat we should try and lock in the final 10 minutes because Joe, because he's got a good use case here. So maybe transition to that.
Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and do that, and we could work through some of these details online. Go ahead, Kellen.
100%. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I found Joe has it sounds like a very similar problem he's trying to solve as us, and looks like he was doing it open source in Kubernetes, and so I asked him to join. Joe, if you don't mind, taking the rest of the time, I would say is yours to kind of talk about what you're looking to solve, and hopefully in the coming weeks, we can discuss alignment, see if we can work together on this, because obviously more brains are better than less. So take it away.
Yeah, sure. Not sure I need a whole 10 minutes, but yeah, hi, I'm Joe. So I sit over in IBM research, and mostly my team hacks on VLLM, and you know, we try to help IBM products adopt VLLM. And you know, so one of our major products is WatsonX.ai. I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but yeah, I mean, our use case is pretty simple, right? We have large, you know, K-serve clusters going on, serving LLMs for users of a SaaS product, right? And you know, we're expecting in the future, once we enable users to tune their own LoRa adapters, you know, we'll have like thousands or tens of thousands of LoRa adapters that we need to serve across a handful of base models served for the VLLM. And in the past, we had been running on Hugging Face TGI, and we had like hacked in prompt tuning support. And we didn't have any sort of like cluster management for the prompt tuned adapters. So, you know, we were rolling with like, you know, you'd have a deployment of TGI, and each pod would try to load like 10,000 prompt adapters that users had tuned, and it didn't go well. So I don't want to end up in the same spot for LoRa adapters, and it sounds like you guys are trying to solve the same problem. So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Awesome. Out of curiosity, how much testing have you guys done with multi-LoRa? It was like, are you just kind of in the early stages of exploring, benchmarking, seeing what your limits are, or just kind of curious there?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. No.
Basically,
no.
yeah.
Awesome. Fair enough. We can reach out in the VLLM Slack. I can probably get you connected with Song. He's done quite a bit of benchmarking. We can kind of talk about some of the pain points we've seen, and something we're actually actively trying to see if we can reduce as far as multi-LoRa. We see some inference performance issues. But anyways, yeah, just wanted to give you a chance to introduce yourself. Really looking forward to working together on this. I think I'm really passionate about LoRa. I think it's really cool. I think it unlocks LLMs for the common man is kind of my little tagline thought. But anyways, awesome.
Great. Yeah. And Joe, maybe as an action item for you, what would be helpful is if you haven't already done so, is creating an issue in the repo that just describes your use case, or you know what you're looking for in the project. Again, just so you know, we don't lose context for this discussion.
Sure. Should that be a discussion or an issue?
I'd say dealer's choice. Maybe discussion for now, and if we have hard actionables, throw it in an issue. But if you do an issue, I don't think we'll be offended.
Cool. Sounds good.
Excellent. Great.
Great. So yeah, like Kelly mentioned, I and a few folks at Google, we have done a lot of benchmarking with multi-LoRa, and yeah, pretty happy to share what we have done, and yeah, looking forward to learning from you guys as well.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
All right.
Sorry to eat up too much time. I wasn't sure how much Joe needed. I just want to give him a buffer. But
yeah, that's
thanks,
perfect.
Kellen.
Thanks, Kellen. And yeah, thanks, Joe, for joining the call. We hope to see you, you know, involved in the community, future calls, and working together. So, so thanks for sharing that information. So, like back to the release, I think we could probably work through some of these details online. We only have a couple minutes left. You know, unless there's any real quick topics to discuss, I would say let's maybe wrap things up a couple of minutes early and start working on some of the action items from the meeting.
sounds great.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day, and we'll catch you online. Bye.